My brother harbored feelings for my wife, and sabotaged my wedding by bringing my vindictive ex-girlfriend to hurt me. Okay, Reddit, buckle up because this is a wild one and I genuinely need some perspective. I am Mark, 30 male, and my incredible wife Eleanor, 28 female, have been married for just over 2 years now. The story I need to tell revolves around my older brother, Stephen, who is 32 male, and my ex-girlfriend from many years ago, Christina, also 30 female. So, let's set the stage. My brother Stephen and I have always had a bit of a complicated relationship. Growing up, he was the golden child in many ways, excelling academically and athletically, while I was more the creative, laid-back type. There was always this underlying current of competition, mostly fueled by him, I think. He always had to one-up me, whether it was grades, sports, or later on, jobs and even relationships. It wasn't overt, aggressive stuff most of the time, more like subtle digs, backhanded compliments, and a general air of superiority he carried. Our parents, bless them, often seemed oblivious or maybe just didn't want to see it, usually brushing off any friction as typical sibling rivalry. Deep down, I always felt like he resented any attention or success I achieved independently of him. Now enter Christina. We dated for about 2 years in our early 20s. It was intense, passionate, and ultimately incredibly toxic. We argued constantly, broke up and got back together more times than I can count. Looking back, it was a deeply unhealthy relationship fueled by insecurity and drama. Stephen was oddly involved throughout it. He was initially friendly with Christina, almost too friendly sometimes, but then he started subtly poisoning the well. He would point out her flaws to me, twist things she said, and generally sow seeds of doubt. He even accidentally let slip things I had told him in confidence to her, knowing it would cause a fight. The final breakup was explosive, involving accusations and a lot of hurt on both sides. Stephen played the concerned older brother role to me, but I later found out from mutual friends that he had been feeding Christina negative stories about me simultaneously. Essentially, he played both sides to ensure we imploded. At the time, I was too hurt and angry to see his full role, but the suspicion always lingered. After that mess, I cut contact with Christina completely and tried to move on. Stephen acted relieved, telling me I was better off without her drama. Yeah, drama he helped orchestrate. Fast forward a few years, I met Eleanor. She is everything Christina wasn't. Kind, stable, intelligent, funny, and genuinely supportive. We clicked instantly. Our relationship was easy, built on mutual respect and trust. When I introduced her to my family, everyone seemed to adore her. My parents were thrilled, and even Stephen seemed, well, he seemed polite, but there was something off. I noticed him staring at her a bit too much sometimes. He'd make comments about her appearance that felt slightly inappropriate, masked as compliments. He tried unusually hard to impress her, recounting old stories where he was the hero, often at my expense in subtle ways. Eleanor noticed it too, mentioning once or twice that Stephen seemed a little intense, but we chalked it up to his personality, maybe him trying too hard to be the cool older brother-in-law. I remember one specific instance during a family dinner where he kept steering the conversation towards my past relationship failures, specifically mentioning Christina, despite Eleanor looking visibly uncomfortable. I shut it down quickly, but his smirk told me he enjoyed making things awkward. Did I mention that he never seemed to settle down himself? He dated sporadically but never anything serious, often complaining that he couldn't find someone good enough. Red flags. Oh, plenty, but hindsight is 20/20, right? When Eleanor and I got engaged, the weirdness ramped up. Stephen offered to help with wedding planning, which was unexpected given he usually avoided that kind of thing. His help mostly consisted of questioning our choices, suggesting things that were way over our budget, and making passive-aggressive remarks about how he would do things differently. He kept pushing to be heavily involved in decisions that were really just between me and Eleanor. The guest list was a particular point of contention. We wanted a relatively intimate wedding, mostly close family and friends. Stephen kept suggesting we invite people I barely knew, old colleagues of his, distant relatives we hadn't seen in years. Then came the +1 discussion. Stephen was single, as usual. We told everyone they could bring a guest. Weeks before the wedding, he still hadn't confirmed if he was bringing anyone. When I pushed him, he got cagey, saying he might bring a friend, someone I didn't know well. I asked who, and he just brushed it off, saying it wasn't finalized yet, but not to worry, she was lovely. Given his history and the weird vibes around Eleanor, A knot of anxiety started forming in my stomach. I even voiced my concern to Eleanor, saying I had a bad feeling about who he might bring. She reassured me, saying Stephen wouldn't deliberately ruin our wedding day. Oh, how wrong we were. I should have trusted my gut. I really should have insisted on knowing who this mystery guest was. The wedding day arrived. It was this beautiful sunny day last October. The venue was perfect, a lovely old manor house with sprawling gardens. Eleanor looked absolutely breathtaking. Standing at the altar waiting for her, I felt this overwhelming sense of peace and happiness, thinking all the drama and stress was behind us. The ceremony was beautiful, emotional, everything we hoped for. We exchanged vows, tears were shed, cheers erupted. It felt like a perfect moment. We moved to the reception area, mingling with guests, soaking it all in. People were laughing, music was playing, champagne was flowing, pure bliss. Then I saw him. Stephen walked in, fashionably late, of course, and standing next to him, clinging to his arm, was Christina. My blood ran cold. It felt like the air was sucked out of the room. She looked different, older obviously, but it was unmistakably her. That same calculated smirk I remembered from our worst fights was plastered on her face. She was wearing a dress that was maybe a shade too close to white and definitely too flashy for a wedding guest. Stephen had this smug look on his face, like he'd just pulled off the world's greatest prank. I froze for a second, just staring. Disbelief warred with white-hot rage. Eleanor saw my face change and followed my gaze. Her eyes widened and she gripped my arm tightly. What the actual fuck was this really happening at my wedding? Guests started murmuring. Thankfully most didn't know who she was, but my close friends and some family members definitely recognized her, and their expressions shifted from celebration to confusion and concern. I immediately walked over to them, trying to keep my voice level, which was damn near impossible. Eleanor stayed back for a moment, probably trying to process before following me. I pulled Stephen aside, away from the main crowd near an entranceway. "What the hell are you doing, Stephen?" I hissed, my voice trembling with anger. He feigned innocence, that classic Stephen move. "What do you mean, Mark? I brought a date like you said I could. Christina and I reconnected recently. We are just friends catching up. She wanted to come and wish you well. Wish me well. Are you serious? You bring the woman who caused me years of grief, who you helped turn into a nightmare to my wedding. You know exactly what you are doing. This isn't reconnecting. This is a deliberate act to hurt me and ruin this day." Christina chimed in then, putting on a sickeningly sweet voice. "Oh, Mark, don't be like that. It has been so long. I am genuinely happy for you. Stephen invited me, and I thought it would be nice to see you settled down. I am sorry for anything bad that happened between us. I was young and stupid." Her fake apology just fueled my anger. "You expect me to believe that? After everything, you both need to leave now." Stephen's mask slipped then. His eyes hardened. "Don't make a scene, Mark. You are overreacting. People will notice. Just let it go. It is not a big deal. She is just a guest. Not a big deal. You brought my toxic ex, who you actively conspired with to make my life hell, to my wedding to Eleanor. Get out, both of you, before I have security remove you." Eleanor stepped forward then, calm but firm. "Stephen, this was incredibly inappropriate and disrespectful. Mark is right. You need to leave, now. Please do not make this any worse than it already is." Christina looked taken aback that Eleanor spoke up. Stephen looked furious, probably because Eleanor wasn't charmed or intimidated. He opened his mouth to argue, probably planning to gaslight us further, but saw the look on my face. He knew I wasn't backing down. He grabbed Christina's arm, muttered something under his breath that sounded like "you will regret this," and stormed out. The rest of the reception was strained. We tried our best to put on brave faces, to enjoy the celebration with our actual friends and family, but the mood had undeniably shifted. A shadow hung over everything. People kept asking what happened, why Stephen left so abruptly. We gave vague answers, not wanting to air the dirty laundry right then and there, but the damage was done. He had successfully tainted our special day. My parents were confused and upset, pulling me aside later asking what was going on. I briefly explained, and while they were shocked at Stephen's choice of guest, they immediately started making excuses for him. Maybe he didn't realize how much it would upset you. Maybe Christina manipulated him. Give him a chance to explain. It was infuriating. Their immediate instinct was to protect Stephen, even after he did something so calculatedly cruel. The honeymoon was supposed to be a blissful escape, but Stephen's stunt loomed large. Eleanor was incredibly supportive, focusing on us and trying to salvage the trip, but I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. It wasn't just about Christina being there. It was the planning, the malice, the smug look on his face. And the lingering question, why go to such lengths? When we got back, the fallout continued. My parents urged me to talk to Stephen to clear the air. I refused. What was there to talk about? He knew what he was doing. Then a few weeks later, the other shoe dropped, providing the missing piece of the puzzle. One of Eleanor's bridesmaids, Sarah, who had known my family for years, came to us looking uncomfortable. She said she needed to tell us something she overheard during the wedding reception, just before the confrontation. She had been near the entrance when Stephen and Christina arrived. She heard Christina hesitate, saying something like, "Maybe this is a bad idea, Stephen. He looks really happy." Sarah then heard Stephen reply with something truly chilling. He said, "Don't worry about it. Mark needs a reality check. Besides, once he sees how pathetic this marriage is, maybe Eleanor will realize she chose the wrong brother. She deserves better than him." Hearing that confirmed my worst fears and suspicions. It wasn't just about hurting me with Christina. It was about Eleanor. That weirdness, the excessive compliments, the attempts to impress her, the undermining of me, it all clicked into place. My brother was jealous. My brother had feelings for my wife. And he brought Christina not just to ruin my day, but potentially to sabotage my marriage, hoping Eleanor would somehow see me as weak or flawed and turn to him instead. The level of delusion and malice was staggering. I felt sick. Betrayed by my own brother on a level I couldn't comprehend. He didn't just disrespect my past. He actively coveted my present and future. Eleanor was horrified and disgusted, but also strangely validated, saying she always felt an uncomfortable vibe from him but didn't want to cause issues. Armed with this information, I knew I couldn't just let it go. My parents' pleas for reconciliation now felt completely hollow. They were enabling his toxic behavior. I haven't spoken to Stephen since the wedding. I have blocked his number, blocked him on social media. My parents are still trying to push for a family meeting, for forgiveness, saying he is family and he must be hurting or confused. Hurting? Confused? He is manipulative and cruel. Eleanor and I are united on this. We want nothing to do with him. The thought of him being around my wife, knowing his intentions, makes my skin crawl. But the situation with my parents is difficult. They are caught in the middle, but their tendency to rug sweep Stephen's behavior is causing a massive rift between us. They think I am being too harsh, holding a grudge. I think I am protecting myself and my marriage from a snake. So Reddit, this is where I am at. My brother deliberately tried to sabotage my wedding by bringing my toxic ex, all apparently because he has some twisted crush on my wife and wanted to undermine our relationship. My parents are minimizing his actions and pressuring me to forgive and forget. Eleanor and I are trying to move forward, but this betrayal hangs heavy. Am I the asshole for wanting to cut my brother out of my life completely after this? Should I try to make my parents understand the depth of his betrayal, or just accept that they might always choose to enable him? What would you do? Update 1. Wow Reddit, just wow. I posted this a couple of days ago, mostly just needing to vent and maybe get some outside perspective. I honestly did not expect this kind of response. My phone has been blowing up nonstop with notifications, comments, and messages. Thank you all so much for the overwhelming support and validation. Reading through your comments has been incredibly helpful, making me feel less like I am going crazy or overreacting. Many of you shared similar stories of sibling rivalry and toxicity, and it is strangely comforting to know I am not alone in dealing with this kind of garbage, though I am sorry others have gone through it too. A lot of you confirmed my gut feeling. Stephen's actions were premeditated, malicious, and absolutely unforgivable in their current context. And you are right, the fact that he harbors feelings for Eleanor takes this from a disgusting prank to something far more sinister. Many commenters pointed out the pattern of behavior going back years, the manipulation during my relationship with Christina, the constant need to one-up me, the weirdness around Eleanor. It all paints a very clear picture of a deeply disturbed and jealous individual. So what has happened since I posted? Well, armed with Sarah's testimony about what she overheard Stephen say to Christina, Eleanor, and I decided we needed to have one final, clear conversation with my parents. No more rug sweeping, no more excuses. We sat them down last night. It was tense, to say the least. Initially, they started with the usual lines. He is your brother, maybe he misspoke, maybe Sarah misheard, family needs to stick together. My mom even cried, saying this was tearing the family apart. But this time I didn't back down. Eleanor didn't either. I calmly but firmly recounted Stephen's pattern of behavior, starting from childhood, through the Christina debacle, his inappropriate comments about Eleanor, the wedding planning interference, and finally, the calculated cruelty of bringing Christina to the wedding with the explicit intent, overheard by Sarah, to undermine my marriage because he wants my wife. I laid it all out. I explained how his actions weren't just a mistake, but a deliberate attack on the happiest day of my life and on my relationship. I told them that his feelings for Eleanor, combined with his actions, made him unsafe to have around us. Eleanor spoke too, explaining how uncomfortable Stephen had made her feel over the years and how violated she felt knowing his intentions. She told them plainly that she would not have a relationship with someone who disrespected her marriage and coveted her husband's wife. Hearing it all laid out so starkly, especially hearing Eleanor's perspective directly, seemed to finally break through their defenses. My dad looked genuinely ashamed. My mom stopped crying and just looked horrified. They asked Sarah if she would be willing to talk to them directly, and she agreed. After speaking with Sarah later that evening, who confirmed everything she heard Stephen say, my parents seemed to finally grasp the severity of the situation. They apologized profusely to both me and Eleanor. They admitted they had been blind to Stephen's behavior for years, always making excuses, always smoothing things over because it was easier. They said they were disgusted by what he did and what he said. It was a difficult conversation, but for the first time I felt like they actually heard me. They acknowledged the depth of the betrayal and agreed that Stephen's actions were inexcusable. As for Stephen, he apparently tried contacting my parents after the wedding, playing the victim, saying I overreacted and kicked him out for no reason. My parents, pre-conversation with us, had been sympathetic. Post-conversation, however, their tone shifted. My dad apparently called Stephen and told him exactly what they now knew, including the overheard conversation. He told Stephen his behavior was deplorable, that he needed serious help, and that until he acknowledged the gravity of his actions and sought that help, they needed space from him too. According to my dad, Stephen initially tried to deny it, then resorted to anger and accusations, blaming me, blaming Christina, blaming everyone but himself. He hasn't contacted any of us since that call. Good riddance. Christina also tried to reach out via social media, sending me a long message full of flimsy excuses and deflections, claiming Stephen pressured her into coming and she deeply regretted it. I didn't even bother reading the whole thing, blocked and deleted. Whatever her role, she willingly participated in hurting me. Not my problem anymore. So things are looking clearer now. Eleanor and I feel validated and supported by my parents, which is a huge relief. The path forward involves maintaining zero contact with Stephen, at least for the foreseeable future, possibly forever. My parents understand and respect this boundary now. It feels like a weight has been lifted, knowing we don't have to fight them on this anymore. Thank you again, Reddit, for giving me the clarity and confidence to confront this head-on. I will post another update if there are any significant developments. Update 2. Hello again, Reddit. It has been about 6 months since my last update, and I wanted to close the loop for everyone who invested time in my story and offered such great advice. The response to my original post and first update continued to be overwhelming, and honestly, reading through your experiences and encouragement really helped Eleanor and me navigate the aftermath of the wedding disaster. So one last time, thank you all sincerely. Life has been significantly more peaceful since we established firm boundaries. Eleanor and I have focused on our marriage, enjoying our newlywed phase without the shadow of my brother's drama hanging over us. Our relationship is stronger than ever, forged through fire, I suppose. We communicate openly, support each other, and prioritize our little family unit above all else. It feels good. It feels right. The biggest change has been the dynamic with my parents. True to their word after our big conversation and speaking with Sarah, they have completely respected our decision for no contact with Stephen. There has been no pressure, no guilt trips, no attempts to force a reconciliation. Instead, they have focused on rebuilding their relationship with me and Eleanor. They have apologized again for their past blindness and enabling behavior, and their actions have backed up their words. We see them regularly, have dinner together, celebrate holidays, and it feels normal. Healthy, even. It turns out that removing the toxic element, Stephen allowed the rest of the family dynamic to heal and function properly. Who knew now about Stephen? Well, the consequences of his actions have slowly but surely caught up with him. After my dad confronted him, Stephen apparently doubled down on his victim narrative with extended family and mutual acquaintances. For a while, some people bought it, thinking I was being overly harsh or that there was just some big misunderstanding. However, the truth has a way of coming out. Sarah wasn't the only one who noticed Stephen's behavior or Christina's presence. Other wedding guests who knew the history started talking. Whispers turned into conversations, and the story of what Stephen did, including the chilling comments Sarah overheard about wanting Eleanor, eventually spread through our wider social and family circle. The narrative shifted. People started seeing Stephen not as the misunderstood victim, but as the manipulative aggressor. Friends started distancing themselves. Extended family members who once defended him grew cold. He tried blaming Christina entirely, but apparently she started telling people that Stephen had manipulated her, feeding her lies about my marriage being unstable and suggesting I might still have feelings for her, convincing her that her presence would somehow be a wake-up call for me. Whether that is true or just her spinning her own story, it further damaged Stephen's credibility. The last I heard, through the family grapevine, Stephen is pretty isolated. His attempts to play the martyr backfired spectacularly. He reportedly complains constantly about how unfair everyone is being, still refusing to take any responsibility. My parents mentioned he has become quite bitter and resentful, but they are holding firm on requiring him to get professional help and demonstrate genuine remorse before they consider rebuilding any kind of relationship. They are sad about the situation, naturally, but they seem resolute in prioritizing their own peace and respecting our boundaries. There was no big dramatic confrontation or elaborate revenge plot from my end, Reddit. The revenge, I guess, was simply letting his own actions speak for themselves and allowing the natural consequences to unfold. His reputation is in tatters among people who matter. He is estranged from his immediate family, and most importantly, he is nowhere near me or my wife. As for Christina, I have no idea what she is up to, and frankly, I do not care. She is irrelevant to my life, so that is pretty much it. Eleanor and I are happy, thriving, and looking forward to our future together, free from the toxicity that plagued us. My relationship with my parents is repaired and possibly stronger than before. Stephen made his choices, and now he is living with the fallout. It is a quiet, peaceful kind of victory. We got the happy beginning to our marriage that we deserved, even if it started a little rocky thanks to him. We are moving on, leaving the drama firmly in the past. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.